Now, China has vowed to take forceful measures in response to the visit of Taiwan's Vice President William Lai to the United States. Lai is stopping off in the U.S. on his way to Paraguay to attend the inauguration of the country's new president. He received a warm welcome from well-wishers after landing in New York. Paraguay is one of 13 countries that recognizes Taiwan as a sovereign nation. The trip has angered China, which says it is prepared to respond forcefully to protect its territorial integrity. Lai outlined his plans for the trip ahead of his flight to New York.
During this visit, I will talk with leaders from other countries. I will meet with delegations from like-minded countries so that the international community understands that Taiwan is a country that believes in democracy, human rights and freedom, and also actively participates in international affairs. I will show the world the efforts we have made in preserving peace in the Indo-Pacific region.
For more on this, let's cross over to our correspondent, James Chatter in Taipei. Hello, James. Tell us more about the trip and why China is so angered by it.
Well, as you mentioned, Taiwan says this is an unofficial transit. Lai, as you mentioned, is on his way to Paraguay to attend the inauguration ceremony of their new president, Paraguay being one of Taiwan's 13 remaining few diplomatic allies. But it is this stopover in the US that most frustrates Beijing. That's because China claims Taiwan as its territory and heavily criticizes any interaction between senior US and Taiwanese officials. But even more so in the current context, Lai is currently the frontrunner to succeed President Tsai Ing-wen in the upcoming presidential election here in Taiwan. They both belong to a party that Beijing has described as separatists, and it's that context which has led to the relatively low-key optics for Lai's plans for a stop in New York. We know, for example, he's going to meet with Taiwanese American communities during his stop in New York, but conversely not likely to meet with prominent members of the US Congress.
And China has had some strong words about this stopover or layover. How is China likely to respond?
Well, it's important to point out here that trips like this are not new. Taiwan's current president, Tsai Ing-wen, has transited through the US 7 times since taking office in 2016. That's led US officials to warn Beijing against using Lai stopovers as a pretext for any type of military action. But more recent trips show Beijing's growing intolerance of transits of this nature. When Tsai Ing-wen transited through the US earlier this year and met with the US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Beijing launched days of military exercises encircling Taiwan, and we saw a similar response following then US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan last year. So far, some rumblings of a response. China's Maritime Safety Administration announced military drills in the East China Sea. But important, again, to point out here that this is waters much further away from Taiwan, and they don't critically include a part of the Chinese military that was really driving a lot of those drills that I just mentioned. So far, analyst sentiment suggests that Beijing will have to do something in response to this stopover, but the severity of that response is still unclear.
Okay, we'll wait to see how that goes. Taiwan is scheduled to hold presidential elections in January next year. What impact could this visit have on that?
Well, this is a very delicate geopolitical moment. As you mentioned, we're just months away now from Taiwan's next presidential election, and all the main candidates are trying to position themselves as the one that can steer Taiwan through these very complex geopolitical waters. I think the thing people here will be watching for is how Beijing responds. And again, China here is in a really tricky position. On one hand, you have the very full-throated warnings, and there will be an expectation within China for their actions to match their words. But they also know that if they push too hard, they could push Taiwanese voters closer to the party with which they refuse to communicate.
Okay. DW correspondent James Chatter, thanks for your time.